His name was Kael Vonn, and we chose him because he had never failed. Not once. Not in 32 years of service to the Dominion. Not in 417 documented engagements across 11 contested systems. Not when he fought the Iron Jaw predators of the Yandara swamps barehanded at the age of 19. Not when he dismantled an entire rebellion cell using nothing but a broken blade and whatever he could reach in the dark. Kael Vonn was what our people called a perfect instrument, honed to a single purpose, incapable of doubt. We sent him to kill one human. I am telling you this because I was there when he came back. I was the one waiting in the receiving bay of the Dominion intelligence station on Rakor Prime. I was the one who had written the mission brief, signed the authorization, and told my superiors that a single warrior of Vonn's caliber would be excessive for the task. I want you to understand that when I say excessive, I meant it as a compliment to Vonn, an insult to the human. I no longer feel that way. His name was something I will not try to reproduce here because names carry weight now that they did not carry before, and I am not certain I have earned the right to speak it casually. The mission file called him Asset 7. A man, former soldier of the Terran Armed Forces, discharged honorably, living in a small settlement on the edge of the contested belt. He had no title, no rank, no active affiliation. He grew food, he repaired machines, he was, according to every intelligence report I had commissioned, a nobody. He had witnessed a covert Dominion operation he was never supposed to see. He had survived 3 previous removal attempts before he was even flagged to my level. 3. Carried out by standard field operatives. The first 2 failures we attributed to incompetence, the third to bad luck. We sent Kael Vonn. I thought it would be over in an afternoon. The settlement was called Harrow's End. Fitting, some of my colleagues joked. A cluster of low buildings pressed against a ridge of gray stone, surrounded by brown fields and the kind of silence that comes when a place has been forgotten by the larger world. 43 residents, mostly elderly. A handful of children, 1 small medical bay with a part-time staff. Vonn arrived in civilian dress, with a cover story about engine trouble and a landing permit that would hold up to 3 layers of scrutiny. The human was in a field when Vonn found him, just working, arms bare in the pale local sunlight, tall by human standards but not remarkable. Our intelligence noted his service record, noted the combat experience, noted the decorations his government had awarded him. We noted these things the way you note the previous owners of a used vehicle. Informational, irrelevant. Vonn had been told to make it quiet. He was good at quiet. What I am about to describe was transmitted back to me in fragments. Vonn wore a full sensor array beneath his civilian clothes. We had every second of it recorded. I have watched the recording more times than I am comfortable admitting, and each time I reach the same point I have to stop. Not because it is difficult to watch, because it is difficult to understand. Vonn made his approach at midday. Excellent light. No witnesses in immediate range. He deployed a non-lethal opener, a fast-acting aerosol compound our chemist designed specifically to incapacitate beings in the human physiological range within 3 to 5 seconds of contact. Tested. Reliable. Standard for quiet extractions before the follow-through. The human turned around. He looked at the dispersing cloud. He put one hand over his mouth and nose. He walked out of the dispersal zone at a pace that could only be described as calm. Not running, walking. Vonn recalibrated. Changed approach. Closed the distance. What followed was 11 minutes and 42 seconds of the most systematic, efficient, and utterly unflustered resistance I have ever seen recorded. And I have seen the war archives. I have seen footage of Yandari berserkers and the siege beasts of the outer colonies. I have spent 20 years in Dominion intelligence watching things that were supposed to be impossible become merely expensive. Nothing I had seen prepared me for a man in a work shirt defending himself in a dirt field like it was a mildly inconvenient errand. Vonn was trained to fight beings larger than himself. He was trained to fight beings faster than himself. He was trained to fight beings who hit harder, saw better, and healed faster than any Dominion soldier alive. His trainers had spent years covering every possible variable: strength, speed, pain tolerance, aggression. They had stress-mapped every documented alien combat style and drilled him against simulations until he could dismantle them in his sleep. They had not trained him to fight something that simply refused to acknowledge that it was losing. The first contact broke 2 of Vonn's fingers on his left hand, not because the human hit them deliberately, because Vonn executed a standard grapple attempt, The human moved in a direction Vonn's model did not predict, and Vonn's own momentum carried his grip into a resistance point that the bones were not designed to survive. 2 clean breaks. I heard them on the audio. Vonn did not stop. He was trained not to stop. The human said something at that point. His voice was even, not raised. I had our translators run it twice before I could accept the rendering. He said, "You should go." Not a threat. Not a boast. Not fear. The tone of a man telling someone they have taken a wrong turn. Vonn did not go. In the minutes that followed, Vonn deployed 3 secondary tools, each designed for rapid incapacitation. Each was countered, diverted, or simply absorbed in ways our mission planners had not anticipated. At one point, the human took a direct hit from an impact device that our field teams used to drop beings twice his mass. He went down. Vonn moved to close. The human got up. I watched this part 4 times before I believed it. The sensor data showed a kinetic impact that should have produced unconsciousness in any human range physiology for a minimum of 8 minutes. He was on his feet in 40 seconds. Not steady. Visibly compromised. One hand braced against his knee, head down, breathing hard, but up. Vonn hesitated. I saw it in the sensor data, a fraction of a second. Nothing that would mean anything in a normal engagement. But Vonn did not hesitate. Vonn had not hesitated in 417 engagements. He hesitated. The human straightened, looked at him and said, "Last chance." His voice was the same. Still even. Still quiet. There was blood on his face from a cut above one eye, and he was holding his ribs with his free hand, and he looked at Kael Vonn, who was our greatest warrior, who had killed things larger and faster and more terrible than any man should be able to kill, and he offered him a way out. Vonn attacked. What happened next is the part one have to stop watching. Vonn went for a finishing hold. His trainers called it the end position. Nothing survives the end position. It is a complete mechanical shutdown of the joints and the primary airways simultaneously, and Vonn had executed it 91 times in real engagements, and never once had it failed to produce the intended result in under 20 seconds. The human let him get into it. I do not mean he was too slow to stop it. I mean he absorbed the initial component, allowed Vonn to commit his weight and leverage to the configuration, and then did something I have spent the better part of 3 months trying to describe to engineers and combat analysts who all tell me is not biomechanically possible. He rotated wrong. That is the only way I can say it. He turned a joint in a direction it does not go, deliberately, controlled, like a man reaching into a tight space to retrieve something. The sound it produced was not a sound I want to describe. The important thing is that the rotation allowed him to break the configuration from the inside, and then he had Vonn's arm, not holding it, not restraining it. He had it the way a craftsman has a tool he is about to set down. With full control and no particular emotion. He looked at Vonn, he said, calm as irrigation water. "I told you to go." Vonn tried to complete the engagement. The arm came off below the shoulder, not torn, not cut. The recording is clear on this. The human applied a leverage principle that our analysts have since replicated on synthetic materials in a laboratory setting, and which requires a load force that no unaugmented human musculature should be able to generate. The joint did not tear. It separated. Clean at the socket. The way you might remove a fitting that was designed to come apart if you applied the right combination of angle and force. Vonn was on the ground. The arm was 2 meters from him. The human stood over him for 4 seconds. Vonn's sensor array caught every frame. The human's hands were at his sides. His breathing was audible. He was still holding his ribs with one hand. The cut above his eye had soaked the left side of his face. He did not finish it. He crouched down. He pressed a cloth against the wound at Vonn's shoulder. He said, still quiet, "You're going to bleed out in about 4 minutes without pressure. Keep this here." Then he walked to his building, came back with a field kit. Did what needed doing medically to make sure Vonn survived, and then he sat down in the dirt 3 meters away and waited. Vonn transmitted an emergency signal. I was on the receiving end. I scrambled a recovery team. 19 minutes later they reached the site. The human had not moved. He was still sitting in the dirt. He had put a bandage on his own ribs. He was watching the horizon with the expression of someone who has finished a necessary task and is waiting for the next thing. When the team landed, he stood. He put his hands up. Not defensively, just open, visible, the way someone does when they want to be understood without a fight. He said, "I think it's time someone senior came to talk to me." I came to talk to him. We met in a secured room on Rakor Prime 4 days after the incident at Harrow's End. He had been transported without resistance. He had eaten what we gave him, he had slept. He had not asked for anything except access to clean water and a way to exercise in the mornings, which we provided because I needed him functional and because, if I am speaking truthfully, denying him something that small felt like a provocation I could not afford. He sat across the table from me and he looked like a man who grew food and repaired machines. Medium height, tired eyes, hands with work scars on the knuckles. The bandaging on his ribs had been replaced by our medical staff and he moved carefully, the way people do when something hurts but they have decided not to let it matter. I had prepared questions. Extensive questions. 14 pages of them organized by priority. I asked him why he let Vonn live. He thought about it. Not performing the thought. Actually considering. Then he said, because he was following orders. And he wasn't going to be a problem after that. I asked him how many removal teams had come before Vonn. He said, 4. There had been a 4th, we had not known. Our intelligence had failed us and he knew it before we did. I asked him what he wanted. He said, to go home, to be left alone, and I want a direct line to whoever is sending people because this is getting tiresome and I would rather sort this out with conversation. He said tiresome. 4 removal teams and our greatest warrior, and he used the word tiresome. I closed my 14 pages of questions. I asked him one thing that was not on the list. I asked him if he had been afraid. At any point, even for a moment, he was quiet for a while. He said, of course I was afraid. I just didn't see how that was useful. I did not know what to do with that. I still do not fully know what to do with it. I have held it in my mind for the months since, turned it over, examined it from angles that my training and my culture and my 30 years in intelligence work had given me, and I keep arriving at the same place. We look at fear as information, as data that tells an organism whether the situation ahead is survivable. When the data says no, a functional mind retreats. It is not weakness, it is accuracy. It is the core of what every warrior culture I have ever studied calls wisdom. You measure the odds, you respect the odds. You do not fight the math. He was afraid. He knew the math. He decided the math was irrelevant. I authorized the arrangement he asked for. A communication channel. A guarantee of non-interference. It took 6 weeks to push through the Dominion approval process, and I spent most of that time writing reports that carefully avoided describing exactly what had occurred in that field. Some things, when described precisely and completely, produce reactions in committee rooms that are not useful to anyone. Kael Vonn was fitted with a prosthetic within a month. He does not discuss the mission. He submitted a single report, 4 sentences long, which was immediately classified at the highest level available to our intelligence directorate. I read it before it was sealed. I will not reproduce it in full. The last sentence said that he recommended we revise our threat classifications for humans across the board, and that the revision should begin at the top of the scale and work downward. He was our greatest warrior. That is what I keep returning to. We did not send a mediocre instrument. We did not send a flawed tool or an unlucky one. We sent the best we had, the best we had ever produced, the sharp end of 30 years of selection and training and conflict, and we sent him against one man who grew food in a dirt field and asked to be left alone. And the man asked him twice to leave. Gave him the chance. Sat in the dirt afterward and kept him alive and waited for someone worth talking to. I go back to that image, Vonn on the ground, the human with a cloth pressed to the wound, the dust settling around them in the afternoon light, the careful, unhurried way he did what needed doing, no differently than he might have repaired a machine that had broken down in his field. No anger. No performance. Just a man finishing what he started and trying to limit the damage. We had called him a nobody. I do not use that word anymore, not for any of them.